Alright, polymer framed guns that function on an AR style system. And what I mean by that is this particular one here, this ATI is a AR-15 style pistol. It has gas impingement, and the bolt carrier in that rides up into a buffer tube system. Okay, putting a lot of strain on the action. This Jawbone here, which is a G-force gun, is somewhat of an AR-9 style. It works the same way. It has a blowback operated bolt, but must come back into a tube with a buffer and spring, much like an AR-15 style action. The reason I state this is because if you do have a polymer lower and a different type of gun where your bolt is not traveling through and putting that type of stress, like an AR style gun stress on it, it may not be a problem. Like a lot of copies of the German G3s or whatever, parts kits come with a polymer lower, but there's really no interface other than it coming back and cocking the hammer, okay? Not like on these guns. And why is that important? Because that is the area of weakness. Now it's confusing. When you go out on YouTube and a lot of people hate these guns and tell you to stay away from them. The advantages of them are they are lighter. So the lightest AR platform you're going to get is with polymer receiver, and the price point is usually a lot lower. They're not as expensive as a metal frame gun. Okay, so that's another advantage, and that's what kind of I think tempts people into this. So we'll take a closer look and discuss this a little bit further. We'll start with the ATI first, and we'll look at it. They had polymer fire control parts in some of the guns, but this is metal. The ones in this one, it's metal. It's not polymer. And as you see, how they do it is they put metal reinforcements, and when they injection mold the plastic, surrounds these points to make them, more rigid or reliable, and that goes also into this here. And where they fail is with the constant of this, your buffer tube is where your bolt carrier comes in at speed, and where they fail is basically in this area here. They'll crack or, give way. And another thing is, even with the upper having some metallic points here and here, and some metal reinforcement down inside in there for the bolt, even if this does hold up, if you do a bunch of mag dumps, this is all polymer, the upper, this handguard, and there is, a steel barrel, and there's a large, I took the handguard off, there's a large metal mounting nut, which also holds, with the two screws, holds the handguard. Well, this is like touching this. If you heat this up after say 2-3 mag dumps, there's a possibility you can melt the plastic, okay, on these. And I've seen everything from these guns where people will tell you they function fine. Even this exact model, there are 2 or 3 people out there that have fired this pistol and say it's fantastic. They've had thousands of rounds through it and everything else. There's also an individual that bought an AR full-size rifle, and he's taken it out, he shot it at 600 yards. He says the gun is reliable, accurate, and works well, and it's fine. But yet, there is a guy that he is sponsored, had an ATI full-length rifle sent to him, and the second time he took the push pins out to disassemble the gun, the springs and the detent, which mine are still in there, the springs and the detent came totally out of the gun and fell out. You know, no abuse or anything. He kind of did get the gun to function and shoot without any issues, but at a certain distance, the accuracy was so far off, he couldn't hit like a 10x8 paper, which, you know, that's no good at all. And he had issues with these pins just coming out of the gun, and the detent and springs come out. There was another video where a fella, his buddy bought one, and he couldn't get this rear pin out, and it got stuck. The front one come out, but the rear one didn't, and they ended up taking a punch and hitting it out. And what happened is the spring, the detent got into that groove, and it actually broke the metal out where the detent was hung up in there, and when he hit it with the punch, it actually broke the aluminum out to where, you know, he damaged the gun through it. Now, there was one gentleman that bought one, did another review, had a rifle, full-size rifle. He could not get the gun to cycle. It would fire, but it wouldn't cycle. It would fire, but it would not cycle the action. So whatever, he stood there, got frustrated. I don't know if the gas port moved or something on him. Probably something like that would be in the gas system. He would fire the gun. It would go off, a bullet would come out, but it would not cycle the bolt in action. And I've looked at this. I took this handguard off, and this is a 1 in 8 twist, so it should work good with 55 grain bullets. And the gas block has 2 set screws and a giant pin driven underneath it. So the gas block is actually pinned to this action, okay, or the barrel, I mean. So this thing ain't gonna move no matter what, all right? And this gun, this must be a newer gun, these components are steel. So yes, I've seen, and they were honest reviews. Some of the guys were sponsored, and they showed that these guns failed. Now, you can go out and find another video where someone tells you that they've had these guns function perfectly, they had no issues with them, okay? And they fired thousands of rounds through them and got them at a relatively, extremely low cost, and they have no issues. You know, common sense tells you it's all plastic. So you don't want to be running this thing on full auto with a 100-round drum. You know, the gun's going to come apart. Actually, a mil spec, whenever you see somebody do a burn down or run an AR platform on full auto, you know, 900, a little over 1,000 rounds, the handguards catch on fire and gas tube, and I've actually seen them melt the barrel on a gun. So if you decide to go this route, and if you're a casual shooter, like I said, the one gentleman, he's been firing the rifle out to 600 yards with fairly good accuracy, tested a lot of ammunition with it, and had no issues. But yet then again, some people had issues right out of the box. So we will find out with this. And the problem with this is if either part fails, okay, you can't replace it with a solid, maybe you could get an upper or something. But then again, also, like I stated when I review this gun in detail, the warranty is a lifetime, okay? But I don't know if the company would tell you that rapid firing or mag dumps, I don't know if they would consider that abusive use of the gun. But we'll see. We're going to test it. And I believe if this thing works, if you just shoot it lightly and don't really get crazy trying to put a whole bunch of rounds out of it, we'll see if it works. I admit, I've had a little experience with them. I did build one years ago, and it did. I got it to work. It worked fine, and I've gotten rid of it. Now we'll look at this thing, and also see this has a metal upper and handguard, and ATI has, and some people have had the gun where they would have an aluminum upper and that with the polymer lower. So that's something you have to look into, because in that way, I think if the polymer lower did fracture on you and you couldn't have it fixed, you could probably replace it with a $60 aluminum lower and be okay. Which brings us to this firearm. Even though this isn't an AR style, uses pistol mags. As far as AR-9 is concerned, it's blowback, comes into a tube, and has a buffer and spring. So it is somewhat of an AR operating gun. Now this has a polymer lower, and we'll get that out and take a look at it. Looking at the Jawbone's upper receiver, it's all aluminum, anodized, the bolt, everything, so basically nothing there to look at. No reinforcements are not needed. The reinforcement is here, but unlike on the ATI, I don't see it going down into this whole lower half of the receiver, which this is where you get a problem with the bolt reciprocating back and forth. That's a stress point, and probably generally in this area here is probably where it would fail after time, if that is the case. Now 9mm, people don't realize this, these 9mm pistols and carbines, they do come back violently, okay, because they're blowback operated. The shorter the barrel, that's pretty stiff. So it's actually stiffer than 5.56. So we'll see how this holds up. And there is no reinforcements up here in this part of the receiver either. But interestingly enough, I did not realize this until I used this Glock mag. This has a bolt hold open device. If you watch, when the magazine hits this little finger here, you'll watch the it throws the bolt hold open up. So that's a feature I didn't realize, and this is different than the others that I've had. This one here is pretty. So there is a bolt hold open on this, which is going to help me when I test this and fire it. Because operating this is a pain. So that's my explanation on why these guns, they cost less because it's easy to manufacture something out of injection molding other than machining a metal part. They're lightweight, makes the guns, somewhat desirable. People like lightweight firearms. But durability, that's the question. All right, let me get them back together and we'll close this video out. All right, there we go. Got them back together. If you can find one of these ATIs with a metal upper, go with that. Try getting at least a metal upper, because that way if your polymer lower fails, you could always replace it with a machined aluminum one. Another thing, we looked at how this is set up. I believe the one guy that was firing this rifle, okay, and he couldn't get it to go back, Some people have mentioned that's an issue where this will flex and pinch. The bolt carrier was one Gunwriter's review. The guy that did the video didn't get into depth or how he fixed it or anything. He just gave up after trying to fire it. So it could be either gas block moved or this was already damaged and flexing to where it wouldn't allow the bolt carrier to travel to the tube. So yes, I'm going to test these out to see how they work. Like I said, the only advantage you're getting is the price point and being lightweight. There's a lot of negatives that come with these firearms, okay? Like I said, if you're buying this gun and want to go do mag dumps and that, I'm sure you'll destroy this in short order. This one here, I don't know, you rapid fire this, the heat's going to build up here, but I don't know if it would get so hot that it would do something to the lower there. And there is no metal reinforcement in it like here. Okay, and this also has a limited warranty, so I don't know if they'd make good if the receiver fails. Okay, that's another thing you have to look into, your warranty information. All right, but that's my thoughts on Polymer. Like I said, I did build one from an 80% upper and lower. Went out, I did shoot it. There's a video somewhere. If I can find it, I will put tags in to where you can see this. And I have reviewed each gun a little bit closer in another video. All right, if you could please hit the like button, subscribe, and stay tuned.